The city called her unstoppable, visionary, ruthless, untouchable. But in the quiet of her glass apartment, Vivian Chen could not stop the ache of watching her 9-year-old son retreat from sound, from crowds, from life itself. He wouldn't speak. He wouldn't dance. Until the morning a school bus pulled up, and a driver with tired knees tapped his boot, heel-toe slide, and her son answered. What began as the smallest movement, almost invisible, would unravel everything she thought she controlled and ignite a story that would change more than just one child's life. On the mornings when the city looked like polished steel and the sun bounced off 1,000 panes of glass, Lila Aragon believed control was just another product her companies could ship. She built platforms that organized chaos. Groceries on demand, surgery scheduled by AI, traffic softened into yellow ribbons on her app. She had turned volatility into valuation, and valuation into headlines. The world called her a visionary. Investors called her unshakable. Journalists used words like empire and genius and ruthless grace. She wore those words the way she wore her clothes, tailored, precise, never wrinkled. There was only one place control didn't follow her, the small bedroom at the end of the corridor where her son Jonah lined up his toy buses in exacting, perfect rows. The boy whose mind loved patterns, but whose body refused music. Noise hurt him, crowds scattered him, sudden claps broke him into pieces. He could code simple loops in Scratch, memorize license plates he'd seen once in passing, and tell you to the minute when Route 18 would arrive at the corner of Ivy and 5th. But he would not dance. He would bolt if a speaker crackled. He would cover his ears when cafeteria chairs scraped. He would curl toward quiet like a seed searching for deeper soil. Lila told herself it didn't matter. Being a dancer wasn't on the blueprint of a good life. Still, on nights when the glass buildings turned to mirrors and showed her a careful woman with careful hair staring back, she would remember her own mother catching her barefoot in a kitchen waltz and spinning her under a string of holiday lights. The sway of a body that says, "I'm here, I'm free," the way joy needed no audience. She put the memory away with other unprofitable things. The first person to notice the way Jonah's right foot kept time with the windshield wipers was not a therapist or a teacher or a consultant charging 5 figures for a weekend workshop. It was a man in a navy jacket with his name stitched in white above the pocket, sitting behind a wide steering wheel that wore a ring of old skin where hands had lived a long time. Gabriel Reyes, the patch said. Route 18. The morning it began, rain dented the city into a softer version of itself. The school bus sighed at the curb, lights blinking like tired eyes. Lila's security detail hovered politely by the brownstone steps. She smoothed Jonah's hood and watched him climb the rubber stairs. The driver said the thing drivers say, "Morning, buddy." Jonah nodded without looking up. His seat was the third on the right, against the window, where he could watch the stops collect like beads on a string. When the wipers set their mechanical metronome, thwap, 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 Jonah's sneaker began a phantom dance against the scuffed vinyl floor. He did not know it was a dance. He believed it was survival. When the world got loud, he found something steady and matched it until the noise broke around him instead of through him. From the mirror bolted to the bus ceiling, Gabe watched the tiny rhythm like a bird pecking at rain. He knew a pulse when he saw one. Years before arthritis found his knuckles and grief took his wife, he had kept food on the table with 3 jobs: night janitor, weekend handyman, and Friday gig dancer at the community center, where old men taught young ones how to turn a triple step into a long story. He hadn't called it art. He had called it rent. But when the right song landed like a coin in a jukebox, he floated. Even now, a route had a beat to it, stop and go like a conga line with rules. At the last drop-off, the bus idled in a wedge of gray morning. Children spilled out with their lunchboxes and their tangled little lives. Jonah waited for the crowd to thin. When he reached the bottom step, he hovered in the doorway as if the ground was a question. Sometimes the change from bus to earth threw him. The air shifted differently here. The echo of the bus shell ended. He felt unshielded and too seen. "You hear it?" Gabe said, and Jonah startled, his hands knitting into themselves. "Hear what?" the boy said, his voice small. "That," Gabe answered, tilting his head toward the engine, toward the wipers, toward gravity itself. "Boom, titch, boom, titch." It's saying, "Step, wait. It's just one step. You don't have to do the whole dance. You just do one step, then wait." He kept his voice low, like he was telling a secret to a shy deer. He moved nothing in his body that could alarm the boy. He kept his hands glued to the wheel, his hips still in his seat, but he tapped the toe of his boot once, twice in time with the wipers, a movement so small it could have been an accident. Jonah's gaze slid toward the boot as if drawn by a magnet he didn't understand. His own shoe answered with something between a flinch and a reply. Tap, tap. "There it is," Gabe murmured, and if pride crept into the corners of his words, he chased it back with gentleness. "One step. You already know it." The boy was gone then, swallowed by the doorway and the yawning brick of the school, but the rhythm stayed behind, humming in the air like a warm hum after a storm. On the app, Lila's team had built solely for her, a family operations platform, they called it, a concierge brain. She could see the bus's location as an amber dot. She could open the live interior camera feed if she chose. Most days, she did not. She pretended she had better things to do than watch a yellow tube of noise inch through traffic. But that night at 11:47 p.m., elbow deep in a term sheet that smelled like fresh ink and old money, she opened the clip labeled Route 18, Rainy Day, 0902. She saw the hovering at the bus stairs and the man's stillness. She saw a boot tap with the care of a man tapping on a sleeping child's shoulder. She saw her son's shoe answer like a bird. She closed the clip, then opened it again. When she sank into bed, the city still bright outside, the memory of her mother's kitchen waltz pushed against the clean, sharp edges of her life. Lila turned off the thought like a light. On dry mornings, the bus ran without poetry. But when it rained, the world obliged with a metronome, and the next time the wipers spoke, it happened again. Step, wait, step, wait. On the third rain, something changed. At the stop with the mural of dolphins leaping against a brick wave, Gabe turned the key and let the engine idle. The drip of water from the metal roof made a soft counterpoint. He looked in the mirror and found Jonah's eyes already there. "You want to see it?" he asked. Jonah sank his face into his hoodie. "Only my foot," Gabe promised. "Promise I won't move anything else? You can do it too or not." Toe, heel, toe, heel. The smallest weight shift in the world, a rock step you could do and still stay almost invisible. Jonah's foot, the right one, tried it like he was trying on a new word. Toe, heel, too much heel, and he winced, correcting. Toe, heel. The bus was a tin church, and the rain preached approval. "Attaboy," Gabe whispered, knowing to say it like a secret and not like applause. At pickup, Lila stood with her hands in her coat pockets and her jaw set, in that way her board called relentless and her employees called terrifying. She saw the bus's door fold back on its concertina hinge, and her son eased down the steps. He looked lighter. There was a strangeness on his face she couldn't name, as if something inside him had found a window and opened it. "How was the day?" she asked. "Wipers make a beat," Jonah said. "It's one step." "What does that mean?" she asked too sharply. He shrugged. "Never mind." She swallowed the impatience and nodded like she understood. The district sent a newsletter about the spring dance the way institutions send hope, brightly with clip art. "A night of joy," it promised. "All grades welcome. DJ, snacks." The email might as well have been titled, "Reasons Not to Go." Lila flagged it for deletion. That night, washing a glass she'd used once and didn't need, she found Jonah in the hallway, reading the flyer like it was a manual to a complex machine. She braced for refusal. He surprised her. "I want to go," he said, every word a test balloon. She felt the floor tilt. "It will be loud," she managed. "Crowded." "I know, but maybe I can do one step." He looked at her, and it hurt, because he was offering her the thing she could never buy. He was offering her risk. "We'll make it safe," she said, meaning it like a vow. Her staff went to work like a small army aligned with a queen. Sound consultants. A quiet room at the back of the gym with beanbags and soft light. Headphones that turned the DJ into a private river. A practice visit to the gym when it was empty, so his body could map exits and corners. She held the logistics in her hands like delicate glass and arranged them in a way that made sense. It was what she knew. What she didn't know how to control arrived on a Tuesday in the form of a phone call from the principal. "We've had a concern," he said, voice careful, the way people spoke when they called rich people about trouble. A parent reported that a staff member may have overstepped. "Mr. Reyes, our bus driver, it seems he's been teaching your son dance moves on the bus." Lila was standing at the window that made the city look small. She felt foolish for the flinch in her chest. "Mr. Reyes hasn't done anything wrong," she said coolly, already tensing for a fight she had not chosen. "I'm sure it's harmless," the principal hurried. "But there are policies. We'll be reminding staff to limit interactions to transportation, you understand?" She did, and she didn't. After she hung up, she could not stop thinking of the driver's hands glued deliberately to the wheel, the way he had made himself small to make space for her son to become big. She made a decision that felt like the opposite of a policy. The next morning, rain tapped a soft secret code on the brownstone steps. Lila let the security detail stay inside. No umbrella. She walked Jonah to the bus and climbed the first step with him. "Ma'am?" Gabe said, startled. His eyebrows tilted like question marks. "I saw the video," Lila said. "The one where you did the foot thing." Gabe's hand hovered over the ignition. "If it made you uncomfortable—" "It didn't," she said. "It made me jealous." The bus filled with the sound of two people thinking. "I'm sorry," she said finally, and it tasted like a new language. "I'm sorry if the school made you feel like you did something wrong. You didn't. My son doesn't let the world inside very often. You know how to knock gently. I don't. I am trying to learn." He looked at her without looking at her, the polite gaze of a man whose every paycheck depended on making powerful people comfortable. "I used to teach a boys' class on Friday nights," he said lightly, as if reporting the weather. "Before my Carmen got sick. We used to dance the old stuff. Nothing fancy. A body just needs a beat and somewhere to go." "How did you know to—" "Wait," Lila asked. "Not push him." "My Jason," he began and stopped, grief snagging on the name. "My boy. He didn't like noise either. We moved through the world like it might drop a pan on the floor if we looked at it wrong. You gotta let the quiet come to you and not spook it. And your son? He likes machines that tell the truth. An engine, he tapped the bus as if it were a horse. An engine never lies about what it's doing. It idles when it rests. It revs when it's ready. It clicks when it cools. That's a good teacher." "Will you just show me the one step?" Lila asked, feeling absurdly shy. He blinked. Then, carefully, as if he were explaining how to hold a newborn, he lifted his boot and shifted his weight. Toe in heel, barely more than breath. When she tried, her body argued. She hadn't let it look unpolished in years. Her ankles were used to heels, her back to perfect posture. She wobbled, and the wobble felt like confession. He pretended not to notice and offered the smallest correction. "Think forward," as a question, not a command. By the time the bus hissed to welcome the last kid and pulled away, she had learned a thing she hadn't expected to. Embarrassment could warm you if you let it. The videos leaked because everything leaks when you are famous. A photographer hired to catch her leaving a board dinner snapped a photo of Lila stepping down from a school bus, smiling at a man whose jacket was patched. A gossip account made a joke about where billionaires find their nannies these days, and another account with an axe to grind accused her of using public employees as private therapists. Within hours, people with nothing to do but shout had a new target. The district, a thin layer of nerves and procedure, blinked and suspended Gabe pending an investigation that would clear him in 3 weeks, but feel like a year. When the call came, Lila did something that startled everyone on her calendar. She canceled everything. She walked to the bus yard with a paper umbrella and the stubbornness that had put a dozen rivals out of business. Rows of yellow buses slept in neat lines. In the shed, a man was cleaning a coffee pot like it had personally betrayed him. "You looking for Reyes?" he grunted. "He's out back." Gabe sat on a concrete step, jacket folded beside him, rain turning his hair into silver commas. He was watching nothing and everything, the way men do when the thing that fills their mornings is taken away. "I'm sorry," Lila said. They were the same words as before, but this time they did a different job. "Not your fault," he said automatically, then remembered who she was and added, "Maybe a little your fault." He meant it as a joke. She nodded as if it were law. She sat next to him and let the rain stitch them into the same weather. "You're good with him," she said. "He's good," Gabe said. "I just tuned the radio." "Dance with me," she said then, and he barked a laugh at the rain. "Here?" "Here. Now." He looked at the bus yard as if it had a dress code. No music. "The rain," she said. "The drip. The throat clearing of that white truck. The squeak of your boot when you breathe wrong." He shook his head, but he stood. Toe, heel, toe, heel. On the step, in the rain, a billionaire and a bus driver made a circle of two people who were just people. She got the rhythm wrong, and then right, and then wrong again, and her laughter, when it came, was the kind that lifts a life an inch closer to the sky. She held a press conference in the school gym, where so many press conferences had gone to die. She did not bring a brand backdrop or a lighting rig. She brought her son. She told the truth without sanding off the corners. "I spend my days building things that scale," she said. "Safety at scale, care at scale. Today, I want to honor something that does not scale but saves lives anyway. The small kindness of a person who looks at a child and sees what they can be coaxed toward, one beat at a time." She asked the district to reinstate Gabe. She asked the internet to stop using children as kindling. She did not ask in the way of someone used to being obeyed. She asked like a mother and like a woman trying not to make a mess she couldn't mop. The superintendent called her that evening and began with an apology shaped like a policy and ended with a policy shaped like an apology. "He'll be back on Monday." Lila texted the news to Gabe with a single line. "You hear that engine? It's saying step wait, step wait." The plan for the dance was simple and therefore foolproof. The DJ agreed to a silent hour to begin the night. Headphones for those who wanted the music without the punch of speakers. A low light that made the gym look like a sky you could touch. The custodian turned off the fans that sputtered like old men clearing their throats. The PTA laid out cookies, the quiet kind that didn't shatter. The principal paced like a man waiting to find out which future he would be living in by morning. In the kitchen, Lila tied the strings of her own fear into a knot and cut it with her teeth. She wore sneakers that offended her stylist and a sweater that made her look like a person instead of a statue. Jonah looked up at her with eyes that had her mother's mischief hiding in them, and he took her hand like hands were instructions. They were late to the quiet hour because elevators decided to be moody, and the security gate's biometrics didn't recognize her thumbprint, as if the whole city were conspiring to teach her patience. By the time they arrived, a summer's worth of rain pounded the roof like a drumline. The lights flickered. The DJ's eyes went worried. And then the gym went black. Children shrieked the way children do when the universe turns the switch off. Someone laughed too loudly to prove they weren't scared. Phones lit small circles of faces. The principal found a flashlight and pointed it at the ceiling as if that might help. The custodian cursed the generator, a small, polite curse like a man apologizing for not having more in his toolbox. The old building had one friend left, the parking lot. Outside on the asphalt, the buses waited with patient hearts, their hazard lights looping amber like warm fireflies. One of them, Route 18, coughed to life, the engine a deep, forgiving promise. "Come on," Gabe shouted, his voice cutting the dark like a hand on your shoulder. "We'll bring the sky inside." They opened the gym doors to rain and bus light. A river of parents and kids flowed out. Gabe rolled the bus to the edge of the lot and angled it so the headlights became a stage and the hazard lights beat out a four-quarters in amber. The doors opened with the sound Jonah now recognized as an inhale. "Just one step," Gabe said to Jonah, to all of them. "A step and a wait." He showed it with his boot, and the crowd calmed, because even chaos bows to something that looks like certainty. Children in headphones found the beat in their own bodies. The principal, who had not danced since an unfortunate incident at his cousin's wedding, closed his eyes and said, "Why not?" The custodian grinned and swayed with the cookie committee. Lila looked at her son and realized he was already moving, his right foot telling his left foot it could take a risk and survive. Toe, heel, toe, heel. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at the bus, because engines don't lie, and at the man whose jacket said Reyes, and at the woman whose sweater had finally learned to be soft. He added a second step. A little rock across like the body, remembers it can translate weight into intention. His shoulders let go of a fear they had clutched for 9 years. The rain became less of a threat and more of a metronome. The amber blink, blink, blink of the hazards turned into applause. You could sit inside. He looked at his mother, and she shook off the last decade of perfect posture and did the thing slippery joy demanded. She stepped forward as a question, not a command. They found each other without looking. The crowd gave them space as if they had drawn a circle with chalk in the middle of the lot. "Again," Jonah said, breathless. "Again." They did it again until first responders who had swung by to make sure the blackout hadn't broken anything stood with their elbows on their chests and nodded in time. Until the rain softened and quit. Until a generator finally found its dignity and the gym lights flickered back like a curtain call. At bedtime, in a house that could fit smaller houses inside it, Jonah stood on his bed in socks and said, "Teach me the next step." Lila laughed because once upon a time there had been a girl in a kitchen who didn't need to be taught, and that girl was still somewhere inside the woman. She showed him a box step so tiny a mouse could do it, and called Gabe to ask what to teach next. Upstairs and across town, a bus driver with tired knees and a heart big as a bus bay gave them a lesson over speakerphone like no Zoom could have done better. The apology the district had offered turned into an invitation. Would Gabe be willing to teach an after-school fundamentals class, rhythm and movement for kids who feared noise? Would he consult on training 4 drivers about sensory-friendly routes? Could the bus yard host a community day? He said yes until his life filled up again, like a room after a long absence. He washed his jacket and stitched a new patch over the one that had frayed. When you are rich, giving money is the easiest way to pretend you gave yourself. Lila had always known that and done it anyway because money still does things that need doing. This time, the check had a name and a shape. The one-step fund opened with a press release her team wrote, and a line in the middle that was hers alone. "We are building a platform that won't scale on purpose." She put money into stipends for drivers who wanted to learn this quiet work, into scholarship chairs for arts therapists, into retrofitting gymnasiums with headphone systems and dimmers and doors that didn't slam like thunder. She paid the custodian overtime to oil hinges and the DJ to learn to mix soft intros, and the principal a bonus for showing up in the rain. "You're ridiculous," her head of communications said privately, half admiring, half baffled. "Probably," she said, and signed another check. Weeks later, she would get on a stage to launch a new product, and the analysts would note that her eyes seemed brighter, her jokes funnier, her ambition newly precise. They would blame it on the successful quarter and the ruthlessness of a model that ate competitors for breakfast. She would smile and let them. You don't tell the market that the thing that tightened your aim was a boy tapping his shoe in a yellow bus that smelled like floor cleaner and future. On a morning so clear it made the buildings look like they didn't weigh anything, Lila stood at the curb and waited for the bus without a security detail. Jonah had learned a dozen steps by then, a rock step, a box, a small grapevine, like a secret. He had learned to return to one step when anxiety rose like a tide. A step and a wait. A body telling itself a story about survival. When the bus arrived, Gabe leaned out of the open door. "Tomorrow we try a turn," he said. "Just a little one." Jonah's eyes went wide the way hope makes eyes wide. "Okay," he said. "If I get dizzy, I stop." "If you get dizzy," Gabe said, dead serious, "you stop." Lila laughed into a sun that seemed suddenly extravagant. "What if we all learned that?" she asked. "What if we all learned to stop when we're dizzy?" "World would be nicer," Gabe said. "Cheaper, too," she added wryly, and he grinned. She watched the bus pull away and stood for a long time after it turned the corner. The street was quiet, the rain a rumor. For once, there was no meeting that couldn't wait 5 minutes. Across town, in a yard of sleeping buses, an engine cooled and clicked like a heartbeat finding its rest. In the gym at school, a custodian propped the doors open to let yesterday's sweat evaporate into today's promise. On her phone, a calendar alert chimed with a title she'd typed herself, "Learn to Lose Count on Purpose." She thought success came from seeing farther than anyone else. Lately, success felt like seeing closer, like noticing the exact moment a foot wanted to move and letting it be enough, like believing that the smallest motion, one step, could be a doorway. That night, after the dishes, and after the email where the venture firm asked if she'd consider a panel on tech for good, and after the predictable headache of a lawsuit they would win and regret anyway, Lila found herself in Jonah's doorway. He was asleep in a sprawl, one arm thrown over his head like a ribbon. On his nightstand, a tiny yellow bus sat at an angle, as if breaking into a joy. "Thank you," she said to the dark, to the rain, to a man with a name stitched above his heart, to the old knowledge inside her bones that remembered another woman's kitchen and a turn that didn't ask permission. In the living room, she moved the coffee table aside. She tapped her toe to the rhythm the refrigerator made. Heel, toe. She asked forward like a question, and she waited for the answer. When it came, it was small, and it was everything. She did it again, and again, and again, until the city lowered its shoulders, and the buildings looked less like weapons and more like shelter. Until the platforms she had built for the world felt like what they were, useful, limited, good. Until the thing she had been certain of, that her son would never dance, became the sweetest thing to be wrong about. When people ask her now, at fundraisers and on panels, and at the annual gala where the red carpet makes everyone forget how to stand like themselves, when they ask her how you get a boy to dance, how you turn fear into motion, she leaves out the parts that would make them cry. She says, "Find a steady sound, make one step, wait." She says, "Engines don't lie." She says, "We forget that all choreography is just walking, arranged." She doesn't say the quietest truth because it is hers and belongs to evenings when the apartment is soft and Jonah is upstairs drawing buses with wings. The truth that a person can spend a lifetime scaling the world and never realize the only thing that needed scaling was a single moment, from impossible to possible, from never to now, from stillness to a body remembering it has permission to live. And if she finds herself on a rainy Wednesday at the curb, stretching her foot inside a shoe to a rhythm made by gravity and pistons and weather, if anyone sees her and smiles, well, let them. The city always loved spectacle. Nobody tells you how ravishing a small private grace can be. The next day at the bus steps, Gabe shows Jonah a turn so small it could be a blink. The boy does it like he was born knowing, then wobbles and laughs and stops himself like a pro. Lila applauds without clapping, which is a skill you learn only when you've loved someone fragile into strength. The bus inhales and swallows her child like a friend. The hazard lights blink a benediction. Step, wait, step, wait. The rain says yes, and the world, as it tends to do, follows along. The morning the world shifts is the morning Vivian Chen will later think of as ordinary, in every way. Gray sky below a higher gray of glass and steel. The smell of burnt toast and coffee that she doesn't drink but can't stop making. The click of her son's hard-soled shoes on the marble floor as he counts each step without saying a word. 1, 2, 3, 4. She knows the rhythm now, even though no sound comes from his mouth. His counting lives in his shoulders, in the precise way he taps the toe of his shoe against the seam where tile meets rug. Tap, tap, tap. Then he pauses at the front door and glances at her without meeting her eyes, that sideways look that lands on the space next to her cheek and never quite reaches her. "Bus in 5, she says, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from his sweater. She is the kind of mother who does not allow wrinkles, whose world is a field of crisp corners and polished surfaces, on defense built over 40 years of never being allowed to falter. She is the mother who owns the building, that holds the apartment, that holds the boy who will not dance. She tells herself she is not disappointed by the last part, the dancing. That would be sentimental. She tells herself she is practical. Leo is 9. He is not broken. He is particular. He is exact. He is safe. And yet, last month, she took him to 3 different movement therapists who said the same true, useless thing in different gentle words. He is listening. He is waiting. He is inside a rhythm you can't hear yet. Outside, the city carves itself into sound. Sirens smear into the honk of cabs. There is the scrape of a scooter brake, the wet hiss of tires over last night's rain. The school bus grows from a blur to a block of yellow, a sudden bright rectangle against the gray. It sighs as it stops, kneels a little, like something old and kind making itself smaller for a child to climb. Vivian watches from the doorway, one hand on the cool brass handle, the other hovering in the air as if she might catch the moment before it falls. The driver opens the folding door. He is new. No, not new. She has seen him for weeks and not looked. Thick jacket, knit cap. The permanent squint of a person who faces morning wind for a living. He says good morning in a voice bumpy with humor. A small mirror swivels to track the steps. Leo hesitates, shoulders tight. "Hey, little man," the driver says, "you know the bus got rules. Number 1, we got stairs." He taps his boot heel, then the toe, then slides a half-inch back and settles. Heel, toe, slide. A single step tucked into a sentence. The movement is nothing, and for Leo, it is everything. His foot twitches. Then he answers without words. Heel, toe, slide. He does it again. The driver's smile opens like a good door. "Now that's right," he says. "You just passed the dance test." Leo climbs. He does not look back. The bus breathes once and pulls away. Vivian stands with her hand still hovering, feeling the unfinished weight of a question she isn't sure how to ask. She could go upstairs and drop into a boiled schedule, messages, meetings, a call with the Asia office, 3 decks to approve, a gallery visit where she is supposed to nod at art and mean it. She could do what she is good at, move numbers around until they obey. She could donate more to the arts program that sends a catalog of smiling children to her office every winter, filed neatly under tax planning. Instead, she stays at the window and watches the bus crawl down the block, stop again, inhale another child. She imagines the step, heel, toe, slide. She imagines an entire morning ride strung together from that single move, a low thrum under the chatter of other people's children. She imagines her son's shoulders softening, his head tilting to find a beat that doesn't demand anything from him except presence. It is nothing. It is everything. She will think that 100 times before this story ends. In the office that day, her power fits like a suit she's outgrown but refuses to retire. She signs. She directs. She decides. When people laugh at her jokes, she times the length of the laugh without meaning to. When they stop laughing, she wishes she still liked the joke. A photo on her desk. Black frame, white mat, one clean border. Holds a younger version of her with her husband at an event where she didn't taste the food. He is in Singapore now, or Shanghai, or some version of a corner office too far away to be useful. They send each other calendars like hostage notes. They are both very successful, which looks impressively like happiness on paper. At 3 in the afternoon, an alert pings across her laptop. The arts program she funds is being cut at Leo's school to make room for something called strategic digital readiness. She calls the principal, who says things about budgets. She offers more money. He says the board is aligned on core competencies. She hears him say, "Dance doesn't scale." At 4, a text from the nanny. "Leo home, 8 apple slices, 1 bruise on left shin, no upset." She closes her eyes, wondering what a 9-year-old collects when a day doesn't upset him, what he notices when she is not looking at him, what he can hear that she cannot. She sees again the driver's foot, heel, toe, slide. At 6:31, she is waiting at the curb when the bus returns. The door folds open. Children spill out in disorganized order, backpacks banging, voices tangled. Then there is Leo. Careful footsteps. The small lift of his chin that means he has decided the doorway is safe. The driver nods once in her direction, then turns to the next parent. He does not know yet that she will make him say his name. She does not know yet that saying his name will change the shape of her life. "Good practice?" she asks Leo, and hates herself for using the wrong word before he can flinch. "Good ride," she revises. "Good stairs?" He looks at her, that glance that is almost eye contact, softer now, as if he is floating a secret close to the surface. Then, without breaking the moment, he taps heel, toe, slide, and steps onto the sidewalk as if it is all one movement. She is a woman known for not crying when other people need her to, so it surprises her when her vision goes blurred around the edges and she must cough once to clear it. She squeezes his fingers gently. He squeezes back. That night she watches old videos on her phone, the ones she took when he was a toddler, and the presence of a camera was the magic that kept her in the same room with him. She watches him rock on chubby feet, listen to the hum of the refrigerator, sway as if he could pull the motor's drone forward with his body and make it into something a human could use. She watches herself in the mirror behind him, phone lifted, trying. Trying is the flavor of her love, she realizes. It is the salt and the lemon all at once. Morning comes with a decision. She doesn't wrap it in a plan. She doesn't announce it to her calendar. She simply puts on a navy coat and a knit cap and walks down to the curb 10 minutes early. The wind is one long exhale between the buildings. When the bus arrives, she raises a hand to stop it, as if it were a taxi and not a routine. The driver opens the door, and the bus huffs like something amused. "Can I talk to you?" she asks. "You are," he says, smiling with the side of his mouth. Up close he looks older than she thought and younger, both at once. The knit cap hides hair that might be gray. His eyes are the color of the bus windows in rain. "I'm Leo's mother." "I figured," he says, not unkind. "He's a good kid." "I know," she says too quickly. Thank you. I saw what you did yesterday with your foot." "That?" He looks down at his boot, as if it has done something privately impressive without his permission. "Just a little navigation. Some kids count the steps. Some kids sing the steps. He already had his own tempo. I just matched it for a second." "It mattered," she says. She wishes she could explain how much, how that small matching loosened something that has been clenched for years. He nods once, as if that's reason enough to keep doing it, which for him it is. "I'm Javier," he says, sticking out a hand that is both rough and careful. "Bus 93. I have goldfish crackers and an unreasonable amount of sanitizer. That's my brand." "Vivian," she says. She does not add titles. "Do you dance?" He laughs, a shaped little sound. "Used to, before my knee decided to retire a couple decades ahead of me." He does another heel, toe, slide there on the bus steps. Still got the one step. The door behind her opens. Leo watches, analyzing the angle between the grown-ups, the tilt of their heads, the distance between their shoes. When Javier lifts his heel the tiniest bit, Leo's foot mirrors it, automatic, a private language made out of gravity and habit. Do it for him again, she says, then catches herself. I mean, if you want. I want, he says, and this time he modifies the step. Heel, toe, slide, tap, a punctuation mark at the end, like a grin. Leo's shoulders give, imperceptibly, that fractional exhale children do when the world fits. They ride away, and she stands there with wind on her teeth, and she thinks about the way money works and does not, the way it lands like a heavy blanket on a problem that requires a pulse instead. She thinks about the board meeting she will call that afternoon, the way the principal said aligned, the way her own assistant used to say it when she meant cornered. At pickup, she thanks Javier again. He waves off the thanks with a tap. She cannot stop herself from asking, "Where did you learn that move?" "In San Juan," he says, almost fond and almost sad. Or maybe in the kitchen watching my mother, her heels and the radio cooking beans, or maybe on the sidewalk when my cousin's boombox was the president of the block. He grins. You don't learn a step, you fall into it. That night she Googles one-step dance and falls into a rabbit hole where strangers teach strangers how to move. She stops herself before the third video. She is a woman who built a life out of knowing the difference between doing and watching. Her hands belong on the stove, cutting broccoli into trees Leo will actually eat. They belong on the back of his head while he reads, quiet, that steady pressure he tolerates when she promises to be the same weight, the same warmth every time. The week becomes ritual. The bus arrives. Javier offers the step like a handshake, slightly different each day. Heel, toe, slide. Heel, toe, slide, tap. Heel, drop, toe, slide. Leo answers. Sometimes he adds a tiny flourish, a barely there bend of the knee, the ghost of a pivot. He never looks jubilant. That is not his style. He looks like a scientist taking notes on how a feeling moves through a body. Vivian stands at the doorway and feels something unclench 1 millimeter at a time. Some days she is brave enough to meet the bus in the afternoon. Some days she is the CEO again and is only air when he comes home. On brave days, she brings hot cocoa in 2 thermoses, one small, one big. The first time she offers Javier a cup, he pretends to consider it as if anyone ever refuses cocoa in wind. I shouldn't, he says. My doctor says I should only drink things that make me sad. Does he also say to stop dancing? He doesn't know about that part. He takes the cup, sips, closes his eyes for 1 second. When he opens them, he looks not younger but perfectly his exact age, which is a relief for both of them. Thank you. She asks him shy questions. Do you have family here? He tells her about a sister in Jersey, a granddaughter in 5th grade who draws horses with improbable eyelashes. She tells him nothing about herself that people can find in an article. No valuations, no lists. She says, my boy likes engines, low sounds. He says, me too. Buses are percussion you can sit inside. One morning when the sidewalk ice has melted into thin shining threads, Javier's step changes. Heel, toe, pause, slide, pause. He meets Leo's gaze in the mirror long enough to find out if the boy noticed. The pause is startling, like a held breath with a horizon beyond it. Leo pauses too. It looks like nothing. It looks like an invitation. Then they slide together. Stop by the depot sometime, Javier says to Vivian quietly, before the door closes. Saturdays, they let me wash these beauties like they're race cars. Sometimes I put music on. If your boy likes engines, engines like him back. She does not make a plan to go. She is a person who expects others to come to her. On Saturday she goes. The depot lives under a stripe of sky she would never choose, dull, bruised with exhaust. The buses rest side by side, 20 yellow whales asleep. A radio plays somewhere, the kind of old song that feels like a clean kitchen, low, nothing to prove. She finds Javier with a hose in his hand and a rhythm in his shoulder. He looks surprised, then not. I brought... She holds up a bag of donuts that makes her feel instantly ridiculous, like she has misunderstood what people want. He looks at the bag like it contains a map to a secret room. Bless you, he says like a grandfather in a story. Glazed? Half, also some with sprinkles. You're trying to win the union, he nods thoughtfully. You may succeed. Leo stands between them, his hands inside his pockets, his head turned toward the nearest bus's open side, where the engine shows itself like a sleeping animal's ribs. Javier tilts the radio slightly. The song darkens into a brass edge, something Latin and stubborn. He looks at Leo, then tips his heel. Heel, toe, slide. Leo's head turns toward Javier's foot. The step happens without the boy looking. Heel, toe, slide. Javier nods, satisfied, and adds a pivot. Leo copies. Another. He copies again. It becomes a sequence like a math problem he cannot stop solving. He is not smiling, but his mouth has loosened from its usual line. His shoulders have forgotten their brace. He is making small circles with his feet, and the circles are growing. Vivian watches her son tilt into gravity, and she feels a complicated anger that is not for Javier, but for the years of doctors and programs and experts who explained him without giving him this. She feels the soft weight of gratitude land on top of the anger and make it something else. The depot is a place where no one fusses when a child sits on a step and listens to an engine breathe. It is a place where a driver with a retired knee teaches a boy a single step on a Saturday because that is what decent people do. That is the shape their days take. There is a bus aide named Tasha who plays clapping games with kids who need hands to show them where the beat is. There is a mechanic named Long who swears in Cantonese and then teaches Leo the Chinese words for bolt and belt and fan. Vivian learns the names like she learns a new city by walking its blocks until they make sense. They become a kind of family without saying it. Family is not a strong enough word, not exactly, but it is close. One Tuesday morning, the school sends home a flyer announcing the Spring Showcase, a night of music and movement for students and families. The flyer's font is too cheerful for how it feels in Vivian's chest, a dare she hopes her son doesn't notice. She sets it on the marble countertop and pretends she is not staring. Leo is not supposed to notice when her breath changes. He notices. He taps the paper with one finger, then arranges it exactly square to the edge of the counter. Tap, tap, heel, toe, slide. Only if you want to, she says too fast, or we could just go and watch. We're excellent watchers. He lifts his heel and whispers something into his own throat. A sound brushes the air, maybe a throat clear, maybe a letter. She doesn't ask. She can wait. When she tells Javier about the showcase, he says he'll do what he does when he's ready. If it's this year, beautiful. If it's 5 years from now, still beautiful. You make everything sound simple. I make everything sound slow, he says. It's different. Day by day, the step spreads from the stairs to other parts of their life. In the kitchen, while the pasta boils, Leo stands by the sink and does heel, toe, slide on the mat. In the elevator, the muffled hum of the cables becomes a metronome they can join politely, just enough to be part of it. In the doctor's waiting room, the old wall clock ticks with its audible click, and Leo inverts the step, toe, heel, slide, as if playing with time. Every now and then he looks at Vivian with a question perched on his mouth, as though he wants to say a word and can't find where it sleeps. Once he whispers, and she leans toward him as if it is a fragile animal she might coax down from a branch. He taps her hand once to say it's okay. She taps back. Heel, toe, slide, tap. It becomes the way they tell each other, I'm here. On the morning of the board meeting about arts funding, she goes in without lipstick or a plan to be flattering. You are cutting the only thing that makes the rest survivable, she says, not raising her voice. She shows data she is ashamed she has to show. Attendance numbers for kids who go to music, suspension rates that drop when students have movement class. She shows a clip from a security camera of a child on a bus step doing a choreography that lasted 10 seconds and somehow opened a door in a life. She doesn't say it is her son. She doesn't need to. The board chair says, not scalable again, and she says, we can scale slowness too. And the room tilts into a fight she is not sure how to win politely. She could write a check that would change everything and teach nothing. She could threaten to pull support and become the villain in a story that isn't about her. She says, I will fund a pilot that listens before it does. A year. You identify the teachers and the rooms and the kids who want it, and the bus drivers. The room blinks. The bus drivers know the beat our kids live in before 8 a.m. If this program doesn't pay them, doesn't honor them, it's trash. Someone laughs before they understand she is serious. Then someone else nods. Then someone else says, quietly, my son learned to count because a driver in our neighborhood counts the turns. The principal looks at the board, at his aligned agenda, at the woman he will never entirely understand. A pilot, he concedes, 1 year. She calls it one step. Javier laughs when he hears the name, a laugh that ends with a small shake of his head, like he's trying not to be sentimental and failing. That's it, he says. That's all any of us can do. The spring showcase arrives like a holiday you aren't sure you believe in until the lights come up. The auditorium smells like sweat and sugar. Parents fill the chairs like a tide. A second grader in a red dress plays a note on the trumpet so pure half the room closes its eyes. A group of fifth graders performs a stomping routine they invented out of desks and pencils and the rhythm of late bells. A little boy on the back row rocks with his hands over his ears, and a volunteer in a bright vest rocks with him. Same pace, same tilt, until they are both calm enough to watch the next thing. Vivian sits in the aisle seat at the end of row 7 with Javier beside her because she asked, and because he said yes, like it had always been obvious. Tasha sits on his other side with a bag of cough drops she isn't sharing. When the lights dim between acts, she feels Javier shift. His hand brushes the edge of his seat like a man testing a floorboard, and the movement passes into the aisle, into her, into the space where her fear has been practicing for years. Heel, toe, slide. She squeezes the program. There is one word printed on the page beneath grade 3 movement, improv. Her breath catches on the old fear. Unknown. When the kids file on stage, Leo is third from the end in a navy shirt that matches his eyes when he's listening hard. He stands in his spot with that particular alert stillness that means he is not overwhelmed, just tuned to a frequency that hasn't started yet. The music is not music exactly, a low drum under a thin melody, a sound like a bus at a stop wrapped in a radio that woke up kind. The teacher, Ms. Hamid, the one whose bracelets are tiny bells, whispers, if your feet have a word, let them say it. Leo's feet have a word. The first step is so small that only a handful of people see it. Heel, toe, slide, and those people gasp for reasons they cannot explain. Then he does it again, larger. Another kid copies him, then another. It's not choreographed. It is politics of the purest kind, influence that doesn't require permission. Miss Hamid follows, honoring the vote. Within seconds, 20 pairs of shoes are heel, toe, sliding in good faith. He pivots. They pivot. He taps. They tap. He pauses. They pause. The pause is a gift. It turns the gym into a held breath into a room with a bigger sky. Then they slide together, and the sound that rises from the audience is not applause yet, but the intake that happens when a thing lines up with the way it was supposed to be. He does not smile. He does not bow. He turns once, not fast, not slow, just the speed of a boy at peace with gravity, and finds his mother in row 7. He holds her there for a second, a full second, eye to eye. She feels herself breathe properly for the first time in months, years, since before everything needed to be braced. Later she will try to remember if he spoke. She will argue with herself about a syllable that might have been a word, about a sound that was either ma or a breath hole in a longer music. It will not matter. In that second, she knows he said something to her body, and her body understood. After, in the hallway, people keep saying congratulations to her, as if she did something. She holds the flowers someone pushed into her hands and thinks of all the times she needed to be told to sit down and listen. She finds Javier near the drinking fountain, elbows on his knees, watching the crowd like a lifeguard in a very clean pool. "You ever think," he says softly, "that all we're doing is giving people permission to hear what they already know?" "Yes," she says, "but I also think someone had to show him one step." "I only had one," he says. "You had exactly the one he needed." They walk to the car, and he limps a little more than he did last week, only visible if you are practicing noticing. She thinks of bags of groceries and narrow walk-ups and knees that carry other people's children for a living, and she wants to give him a house and a surgery and 6 fewer decades of work. She settles on offering him a ride. He laughs as if that's both too much and just right. He climbs into the back with Leo because that is where he sits every day of his life, and he does heel, toe, slide against the floor mat as if the universe is a polite place and the world keeps its beat even in cars that do not look like buses. The pilot program starts quietly. It uses rooms no one was using and money no one admits they were wasting. There is a teacher in a second-floor classroom with a scarf she ties at her waist like a sash to remind herself she has hips. There is a custodian who turns a mop into a drumstick and teaches syncopation to 5th graders who understand they are learning math, but agree not to say it out loud. There is a spreadsheet that Vivian keeps and hides from herself, because some part of her still believes that numbers should not be what proves a thing is worth. It shows attendance stabilizing and visits to the nurse dropping. It shows weekly checkpoints where kids write, "I felt my insides as a place," and "I think I am music, and I don't know, but I can wait." One afternoon, the school board calls to explain that, due to budget realignment, 3 route consolidations are planned that will eliminate Bus 93. Vivian does not yell. She has learned that yelling turns into a story about her instead of about the thing that matters. She invites the board to the depot. She brings donuts and coffee and a compact orchestra of parents and kids and drivers who tell their version of what a bus does. It moves children, yes. It also reminds them that mornings can start with something predictable, something kind. "We do 15,000 conversations in under an hour," Tasha says with her hands on her hips and the strength of a poet. Some of those conversations happen with feet. Board members stand in shirts that fear grease and drink coffee from cups with handles they are not used to. Javier stands with his knee and his step and talks about the art of stairs. "I am not performing," he says. "I am matching. You have to be humble to match someone. You have to leave your music and walk to theirs." Vivian says nothing until they are done. Then she says, "Roots are not numbers. They are neighborhoods braided into mornings. If you cut them without listening, you cut the neighborhood. If you cut us, you cut him." And she points without embarrassment at her own son, who is standing with 2 fingers against the side of Bus 93, tapping that soft private code that means, "This metal animal is safe." That means if it were a person, it would be a person worth keeping. The board cancels the consolidation. It is not because she is a billionaire. It is because it is spring, and something has shifted, and everyone is tired of pretending this isn't about love. On a Wednesday in May, the pilot gets a room in the evening at the community center near the depot, the one that smells like old basketballs and the kind of soap that never quite leaves. 15 families show up. Some fathers wear suits that say they came directly from work and didn't want to see their kids for the first time that day through a screen. Some mothers wear sneakers with the laces done double because they plan to move. A grandmother sits alert at the end of a bench ready to clap when nobody else knows where the downbeat is. Javier teaches an entire class without leaving the one step. He turns it like a gem catching light. Heel, toe, slide from the side, from the back, in a circle, in a line. He adds a pause and watches grown-ups cry without shame. He gives them a pivot and says, "Look, now you are all salsa dancers, and you didn't even have to buy shoes." Tasha claps rhythms that make kids grin because their hands know something their mouths don't. Long sets out cones and calls them lighthouses and makes the littlest ones navigate the room without bumping into anybody's precious ship. Vivian stands against the wall and holds a clipboard and also does the step in her head because there are some things you cannot not do once you know them. After class, a father with ink on his fingers asks if this program will be here in the fall. She wants to say yes. She says, "Only if you help run it." He nods as if she has passed a test he was waiting to give. The program becomes a foundation. It becomes a fund that writes checks with conditions stitched to them like little warnings. You must pay the people who do the quiet work. You must not photograph children when they are finding their insides. You must never, ever call slowness a waste. She calls the fund One Step because nothing has felt more honest to her since she learned to move without asking for permission from a mirror. She puts Javier on the board. He tries to decline. She threatens him with donuts until he agrees. He shows up to meetings in a jacket that is 2 decades old and perfect and sits with his knee and says, "We're still talking about feet, right?" And she says, "Always." And the meeting is half done. On a weekend in June, she hears Leo humming. It is low, like a bus trying not to wake the street, and it is real. He hums and moves at the same time. He sticks his arms out and keeps them close. He opens his fingers and closes them. He bends his knees and finds the sweet spot where a human is a spring. He looks at her. He opens his mouth. "Ma," he says, small and enormous. She does not move, not even the way a leaf moves when wind breathes. He touches the table, heel, toe, slide. "Ma?" he says again. The second syllable, a question and a declaration. She answers with her body, heel, toe, slide. He nods like a scientist whose hypothesis has been proven by an experiment repeated in a clean lab. He returns to his humming. They dance in the kitchen sometimes now. It looks like practice. It looks like prayer. It looks like a boy talking to gravity and a mother learning a language she doesn't control. She discovers the pleasure of following. It is not weakness. It is a relief, like leaning your back into a door you don't have to hold shut anymore. What happens when he grows up, people ask her, because people imagine fairness lives somewhere in subject lines. What does he do? She answers differently every time because the truth keeps changing in lovely ways. He becomes an engineer who designs engines that hum kindly. He becomes a teacher for kids whose first language is not speech. He becomes a dancer with a one-step show that sells out in cities that need it most. He becomes a man who walks through the world with feet that know what to do. She doesn't say, he becomes, period. That is the miracle. He becomes. On a quiet July evening, the community center holds a small recital, not because anyone needs to be watched, but because sometimes it is good to mark a season. Javier sits on a chair with his knee out straight and a bag of ice balanced on it, and watches his granddaughter discover she can make a whole room move by pausing at the right time. Tasha wears a dress that looks like sound. Long stands at the back and nods at the air like he's fixing an engine no one else can see. Vivian is asked to speak. She hates it, and she does it because life is rude like that. She does not thank donors. She does not talk about metrics. She says, "A bus driver showed my son one step, and now he dances with his feet and with a part of himself that used to be hiding." If you are here tonight, you are part of that. If you are in a city far away and never meet any of us, you are still part of that because somebody showed you one step when you needed it. Our job is to notice which step other people have and match it, slow and humble and real. After Javier says, "You finally sound like a person," she aims her elbow at his ribs. He evades with a heel, toe, slide, then winces and puts the ice back on his knee. "You should fix that," she says. "I should," he says. "I'm saving up." "You're an employee of the program." "I am a soldier of the Union," he says grandly. "We do not take advantage." "I am a bully with a checkbook," she says, more soft than mean. "You are a woman who knows that the first thing anyone needs to heal is permission," he answers. "I'll let you know when I'm ready to accept it." He does later in a winter when the knee becomes bossy. The surgery goes fine. He shows up to work with a cane that has a carved handle shaped like a dancing shoe. He tells everyone he stole it from a wizard. He teaches a new series at the community center called "Sitting Down is Not the Enemy," where the first lesson is how to tap your heels while breathing like you are not being chased. In spring, One Step funds a new pilot in 3 other schools. The principal, who said, aligned in a way that made her want to throw her expensive pen into the river, calls to say he was wrong. She says, "I will not be smug," and then is a little. At home, the apartment feels like a place where a family lives because one does. She orders less. She apologizes more. She installs a rug so Leo can practice friction. She buys speakers and plays music at a volume his therapist helps her calibrate, low enough for his ears, loud enough for her heart. He hums around corners. She follows. On the anniversary of the first morning step, she and Leo ride the bus to school instead of sending him down with the elevator man. They sit 2 rows back because Javier says that's the best compromise between safety and view. The engine hums their bones. When the bus stops, Vivian stands and hesitates because old habits die last. Javier tips his heel, then his toe, then slides. Leo does the same and looks back at her, one eyebrow raised. "You too." She does it. Heel, toe, slide. It is clumsy. It is perfect. The bus cheers, a kid chorus, and for once the sound in her skull isn't the metal shriek of a duty she can never do well enough. It is a good noise, a real one. She bows, ridiculous, and they laugh at her beloved ridiculousness, which is new and therefore sacred. On the last day of 3rd grade, the school invites families into the gym to do the One Step together because it has become a thing, like a flag that doesn't require allegiance, just attendance. Parents in suits and scrubs, aunties with handbags that could stop traffic, teachers who have learned to move their hips in ways the curriculum never mentioned. The principal is there in socks, a man brave enough to be human in front of people who pay his salary. They tap and slide and pivot and pause, and in that pause, the whole room remembers why they came. Not to win, not to prove, not to fix, only to belong. The gym is hot, and it smells like sneakers and fruit snacks and joy. In the middle of it all, Leo pauses just a hair longer than everyone else, and the room waits because they want to know where he will go. He goes nowhere. He stands and breathes. Then he slides, and the room follows, and it is the kind of leadership that doesn't require a microphone. Vivian catches Javier's eye across the gym. He touches 2 fingers to his hat, like a man from a film whose ending you trust. She touches 2 fingers to her heart, like a person who knows that organs are instruments. You can learn to play them kinder. You can show someone one step and change what they think their body is for. Years later, after One Step becomes a thing other cities steal and claim they invented, after articles appear that guess wrong about who saved whom, Vivian will return to the depot on a quiet Saturday when the radio is a clean kitchen and the sky is the right kind of blue for thinking. Javier will be there, older and somehow more himself. Leo will be there, taller, with headphones around his neck, speaking when spoken to, and sometimes when not, always careful, always honest. Tasha will be there with 2 grandsons who clap before they can walk. Long will be there with a new apprentice who has learned the difference between a belt that squeals and a belt that sings. They will eat donuts and call it a meeting. They will plan nothing and accomplish the next good thing. Vivian will look up at the big open of the depot roof and think, this is what money is for. It is a bridge you build after you let someone else choose the direction. It is a room you open so a step has somewhere to land. Before they leave, she will stand on the bus steps and do it once more for the old days. Heel, toe, slide. Javier will nod. That'll get you anywhere, he'll say, like a blessing and a fact. And somewhere deep in the city, in a kitchen or a living room or a bus step, someone will show someone else the same thing, slow and humble, one person to another. This is how you match. This is how you move. This is how you make a morning into a place where a child can arrive. Heel, toe, slide.